All right. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody has had a great weekend and an even greater week. Of course, I am Perry White. Glad to have you guys here to join us on the Yard Network. Hell of a week when you're talking about baseball regionals and you see the title. We're going to be talking about the SEC. 13 teams entered the regional. 4 teams are headed to the Super Regional. Of course, as always, my man Zach McKinnell is going to join us here in just a minute from FCS Football Central, the Blue Bloods, to break down all of the games from this past weekend. We're going to look ahead towards the Super Regionals. We're going to try to figure out what happened, what went wrong for the SEC this past weekend, and what went right for the teams that ultimately found success. And for everybody that's out there, if you want to keep up with On the Yard, be sure to go to On the Yard across all social media networks. You can, of course, find us on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, as well as go and subscribe to the On the Yard Network YouTube channel. We would love to have you be a part of it. Be right there with us as we continue to grow this. We've been covering the SEC from the very beginning of SEC conference play. And now here we are on the back end looking as we get ready to get to Omaha. Slowly but surely, we're inching our way closer and closer to Omaha. So this thing has really, I guess, for me, given me a lot of insight this year. When you look at the SEC, when you look at the overall teams, I mean, the SEC, of course, dominated the top 25 this year. When you look at overall teams for the top 25 in the country, we're down to just 4. My man, Zach McKinnell joining me right now. Zach, what's going on?
What's up, man?
How you doing, man?
Good, good. Staying busy as always. Looking forward to this weekend, man. We started up tomorrow.
So, just before we jump into everything, man, just for you, just overall looking at the landscape of college baseball, your thoughts?
Oh man, I mean, where do I even start, Perry? Uh, we talked about the depth of the league at multiple points this year, right? But it's funny. Once we got to the big stage, it was a lot of these teams did not deliver um, at all in the way we thought they were. I mean, I look at Vandy especially. Was so hot coming out of the SEC tournament. They were hot late in the regular season and just lay an absolute egg over there in Nashville, man. And shout out to Louisville getting out of that regional. I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup between them and Miami in the second round. Very curious to see how that one goes. But I mean, you even look, I mean, Mississippi State wasn't the favorite to come out of Tallahassee, but they don't get it done. Oklahoma chokes and can't get out of Chapel Hill against UNC. You look at Florida, had a chance to get out of that Conway Regional. We looked at them as a team that potentially could pull some upsets. They don't get it done. Kentucky disappointed in the Clemson Regional. LSU was even on the ropes at one point, right, Perry? In
Mm-hmm.
their regional. Georgia finds a way to lose their regional, which they should have been favored, heavily. And I think we kind of both expected Ole Miss to potentially struggle, Perry. That was a really tough regional with some dark horse teams, but I don't think either one of us saw Murray State as the team that was going to push Georgia Tech and Ole Miss in that Oxford regional. And then I think another big shocker, man, a team that dominated the entire regular season in the SEC, Texas, finds a way to lose in that Austin series. And man, I want to give a shout out to UTSA. If I'm not mistaken now, Perry, they are 3-0 against Texas this year. Not only did they beat them twice in the regionals, they beat them in the regular season too. So maybe UTSA is just the Longhorns' kryptonite this year. Everybody's got that team. Apparently, UTSA was that team for Texas this year.
Let's jump right into it. Let's go over to a host site of number 13 seed Carolina, who hosted in their regional, Coastal Carolina, Florida, East Carolina, and of course, Fairfield. Now, of course, for everybody, we're going to go the trajectory along the route of the SEC. And because it is in that field, we have Florida, who took on East Carolina in game 1 in this one on Friday. And how about East Carolina taking it to Florida? 11-6 was the final score in this one. East Carolina, 15 runs, 0 errors in this one for the Gators, 15 hits for East Carolina. For the Gators, 9 hits and 2 errors. East Carolina puts Florida Gators in the elimination bracket. Then Florida takes on Fairfield in the elimination bracket. Florida wins 17-2. The Gators get it done off of 16 hits, 0 errors. For Fairfield on the other side, 5 hits and 5 errors. And then we have the rematch of Florida and East Carolina again. East Carolina gets the Gators once more. 11-4 is the final score as East Carolina in this one. 12 hits, 1 error, Blue. And for the Gators, 7 hits and 3 errors. The Gators get eliminated in the Coastal Carolina Regional. And, of course, Coastal Carolina ends up winning the entire regional. And before I let you go into this, there were some issues with Florida's head coach that made national attention and national news, along with the site coordinators at Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, not a great look for Florida. And then they kind of like put out, that AI statement, that they did, and that kind of got some backlash. At the end of the day, I think you just kind of saw frustration boil over a little bit, especially the fact, they give up what 22 combined runs against East Carolina, and they just didn't have a in the postseason. They didn't have it going. And I think it just kind of stems from frustration throughout the whole year, right? Period. They come in preseason highly ranked, highly touted, they start out just abysmal, right? And they get a little bit of momentum mid-season toward the end, and we look at them as possibly a potential dark horse in the SEC tournament that never kind of festered out as how we thought, and they really kind of were disappointing in postseason play. And I think the fact that you saw them, their pitching staff just kind of let them down. Offense wasn't bad, right? You put up 10 runs in 2 games. You feel like you have a pretty solid shot to win. It was just that Florida didn't have, I weren't able to live up to the talent. I think you just saw that frustration bowl over. But I do want to say, man, shout out to Coastal Carolina, arguably the hottest team in the country. Terry, I think they're up to 21 consecutive wins now.
Wow.
They're on a roll right now, and so they get another chance to, I guess, make the SEC's postseason even worse as they go to Auburn this weekend. So, Coastal Carolina is a scary team, man. But shout out to them that they do what they're supposed to do. And I think that champion that final game, man, you saw that their bats they were hot, right? 28 runs in their first 2 games. Coastal Carolina wasn't able to get the bats going. Their pitching staff was good enough to get them through, winning 1-0 against East Carolina in that final game. And so I was really impressed with Coastal this weekend.
Just squeaking by to get it done. They win their regional. Coastal Carolina advanced to the super regional. Then we move on over to Austin, Texas. Number 2, the Texas Longhorns in the nation be able to get it done, hosting UTSA, Kansas State, and Houston Christian. Let's look at Texas in their first game against Houston Christian. The Longhorns get it done 7-1. They got it done off of 7 hits, 0 errors on the other side for Houston Christian. 8 hits and 3 errors. The Longhorns go up 1-0 in the regional. Then they take on UTSA, as you talked about, their kryptonite this year. UTSA gets the victory 9-7 over the Longhorns. The Roadrunners in this one, 12 hits, 0 errors on the other side for Texas. 10 hits and 2 errors. Not so fast. Texas is now sent to the elimination game. In the elimination game, they take on Kansas State. In this one, Texas is all the Longhorns. 15-8 final score. Longhorns get it done off of 16 hits, 0 errors on the other side for Kansas State. 6 hits, 2 errors. Now we set up a rematch between the Longhorns and the Roadrunners. It's Texas and UTSA. And how about UTSA sealing the deal over in Austin, Texas, in which we've said all year, Austin is one of the toughest places for anybody to go over and play, let alone when it counts in this magnitude of a regional. And how about UTSA coming over, getting that victory? 7-4 was the final score for the Roadrunners. 8 hits, 1 error on the other side for the Longhorns. 9 hits, 1 error. UTSA advances to the Super Regional. They knock off the Texas Longhorns, who pretty much for most of the season, especially once conference play started in the SEC, no doubt about it, looked like one of the best teams and one of the favorites to go to Omaha. But now that dream is all over with, and it's UTSA advancing to the Super Regional, Blue.
Texas has some costly errors in some of these games, and also too, man, their pitching staff just couldn't seem to figure out UTSA. I mean, what 16 runs allowed in those 2 games that they faced UTSA, and I mean they just couldn't get it going. I think you even saw their bats got really hot against Kansas State, and it kind of continued right into that next game. I mean, Texas hit well this weekend. I thought, what is it? I think that they had over 30 runs this weekend. I mean, Perry, if I tell you Texas is going to score 30 plus runs this weekend, I'm taking that. Go
Yeah,
ahead and
you had
uh,
7 against UTSA in the first game. You had 15 against Kansas State, and then you had another 4 against UTSA in the last game.
Yeah, so man, you feel really good if you're Texas with the bats. It was just the pitching staff weren't able to figure out UTSA, and Perry, we see this across all sports, right? And Texas is a disappointment because they dominated the SEC. They were what, the number two overall seed.
Hmm.
They were the best team in the SEC all year long. There's just sometimes you just see Perry, certain teams just have your number. And we see it in football all the time. We see it in basketball. We see it in college baseball. Sometimes there's just bad matchups. And I don't know what it is about this UTSA team, but it's just a bad matchup for Texas. But man, what a disappointment for Texas to run through the SEC in their first year like this and not be able to deliver in the postseason, man, because this was one of the years that they had set up to make a run to the College World Series and possibly make some waves when they got there.
Yeah, expectations were high. Congratulations to UTSA. They have won the Austin Regional. They will advance to the Super Regional. Now let's go over to Clemson. Number 11 Clemson hosting a regional. And in this one, a tough one. West Virginia, Kentucky, and University of South Carolina upstate. And let's look at Kentucky on day one for them having to take on a really tough Virginia team. And it was a tough game. It came down to be the final score. 4-3 was the final. You look at for the Mountaineers, 7 hits, 2 errors in this one. On the other side for the Wildcats of Kentucky, 5 hits, 2 errors. Kentucky goes down, heads to the elimination game. In the elimination game, they're up against South Carolina upstate. In this one, it's all Wildcats, 7-3 the final score. Kentucky in this one get it done off of 8 hits, 0 error. On the other side for SC upstate, 4 hits, 0 errors. Kentucky survives. Here they are against the host team, Clemson. And it's all Kentucky, and it's Kentucky big. 16-4 was the final score. Kentucky really getting it done. Opened it up with 6 runs in the bottom of the fourth. 16-4 the final score. 13 hits in this ball game for the Wildcats. 1 error on the other side for the Clemson Tigers. 9 hits, 7 errors. And then we're looking at, okay, back to game 1 for the finale. It's Kentucky versus West Virginia. This game was decided by 1 run the first time. And in this one, it was decided by 1 run. Again, a hell of a game. 13-12 was the final score as the Mountaineers were able to squeak it out over the Kentucky. Listen, 12 hits, 5 errors for the Mountaineers in this one. For Kentucky on the other side, 13 hits and 2 errors. Hell of a game. Shout out to West Virginia. They have survived and advanced. West Virginia Mountaineers, as we had talked about already, was a tough team that maybe was getting overlooked, but they went into this Clemson Regional, flexed their muscle, and they ended up winning it all. And as they head to the Super Regional, but I think you got to say, you remember I was talking about Kentucky. It was something about this team. I didn't know what it was. They're not pretty to watch, but they're scrappy. And I think that's what we saw in this one and why they went back and forth with West Virginia, one of the better teams in the country thus far, as we've seen headed to the Super Regional. But it just wasn't enough. But I think hats off to Kentucky. Hell of a way to fight to end the season. But even more, how about West Virginia getting it done in the Clemson Regional?
Man, that last game, that champion, not I guess it'd be the championship game. Man, like, and also let's put in perspective, West Virginia won 40 plus games this year. Like this wasn't just, like this team was really, really good. And there were some people who thought this team should have hosted. And I
Yep.
saw some arguments on that on social media, but let's just put like good teams find a way to win when they don't play their best. You mentioned the 5 errors, right? In that championship game, they were down going into that eighth inning, man. They put up 6 runs in the eighth to seal this victory, at the top of the ninth, keep Kentucky scoreless. And man, it was just delivering in clutch moments. And I also do think it was kind of a just getting hot at the right time situation here for West Virginia. They squeaked that they get the 4-3 win in that first game. Then they get really hot against Clemson, right? Put up 9 runs in that one. And then the hitting just continued to get hot against Kentucky in that championship game. And I thought Kentucky played really well this weekend, especially bouncing back from that first loss. They lose that one by 1 run. They look really good against USC Upstate. But then also, man, that Clemson game, that was probably the best I've seen Kentucky play as a team in a long time. As we talked about them, how inconsistent they've been in conference play. It was a heartbreaker for Kentucky, man, but I just think West Virginia was a really good team, and I don't think anyone should be surprised that they came out of that
No
regional.
doubt about it. West Virginia moves on to the Super Regional. All right, let's go over to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Number 16, Southern Miss hosts Alabama, Miami, and Columbia. And let's look at where the Alabama Crimson Tide in their game one matchup with the Miami Hurricanes. It was all Hurricanes in this one, 5-3 the final score, as the Hurricanes were able to get by the Crimson Tide. For this one, Miami get it done off of 8 hits, 1 error for the Crimson Tide, 7 hits and 1 error. Alabama then moves on to take on the host team, Southern Miss, in the elimination game. And it was all Southern Miss in this one. 6-5 was the final score. Southern Miss gets it done. The Golden Eagles off of 8 hits, 0 errors on the other side for the Crimson Tide. 9 hits, 1 error. And that's all she wrote, folks. Miami ultimately wins this regional. They're headed to the Super Regional. But nonetheless, Alabama goes 0-2 in this regional before going home, man. You know, you look at this one. Shout out to Miami. But Alabama nonetheless went here and just completely laid an egg.
Oh man, I'll be honest. I don't know if I saw Miami coming out of this regional, Perry. I'll be 100% honest with you. I definitely thought Southern Miss potentially could have because I mean, you look at Miami, Perry, they were only one game above 500 in conference play, and they were 7-14 on the road.
Yeah,
This
15-14 to be exact.
Yeah, like they lose. I think they lost a series to an out of conference series to Florida earlier this year. They just didn't show me anything that would make me think they were going to put this together like this. And even in the ACC tournament, man, they got dominated by Cal. Like they got run ruled, if I'm not mistaken, in like the eighth inning. And you look at you look at how I don't. Could you say dominant to a point? I mean, because I know they dominated Columbia. 14-1 was insane, especially for a team that just knocked off Southern Miss. But Alabama was disappointing, man. I think it just goes back to we saw this with Alabama throughout the year, right? There was one point in the season where we were talking, are they in the upper echelon of SEC teams? And
Mm-hmm.
we had that conversation on the show. Well, then Perry, what, 2 weeks later, we were like, man, is Alabama going to fall out of this race? What is going on? And then they would win a series or two or look good to kind of keep you in that middle of the pack. And I think Alabama, arguably outside of maybe Vandy and Texas potentially, was probably the most disappointing SEC team in the postseason. I mean, the fact that they weren't able to even get a single win is insane. And I think Miami responded really well because when I saw them get beat 17-6 in that first game against Southern Miss, I was like, "Oh man, this isn't going to be good." Southern Miss is locked in now; they're rolling, and then for Miami to come back and get that win by 1 run in that last game, huge for the Hurricanes. And I'm going to be very interested to see how they match up in the Super Regional against the Louisville team that's rolling right now. So, be very very curious to see how the Hurricanes do moving forward.
Congratulations to the Miami Hurricane winning that regional down over in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, in which Southern Miss, a team we have been talking about all year coming out of the Sun Belt, hey, just came up short. All right, now let's look over at Fayetteville, right? Arkansas, number 3 in that regional. You had Kansas, you had Creighton, and North Dakota State. All of these teams coming in to make it a fight. And how about Arkansas in game 1 against North Dakota State? The Razorbacks get it done 6-2 in this one. 9 hits, 0 errors for the Razorbacks. On the other side for North Dakota State and the Bison, 9 hits and 1 error. The Razorbacks then move on to take on a pretty good Creighton team. It was all Creighton, 12-1 in this one. Creighton gets it done. 13 hits, 0 errors for the Razorbacks in a tough day, only putting up 1 run. 5 hits and 0 errors. Then the Razorbacks come back again with a rematch against Creighton. 8-3 was the final score. 9 hits, 0 errors for the Razorbacks on the other side for Creighton. 5 hits and 0 errors. How about the Razorbacks surviving and advancing in their own regional? Arkansas moves on to the Super Regional.
I thought they had one of the more manageable regionals out there. So I'm not surprised Arkansas got this one done. I mean, you look at North Dakota State, man, what a story, right, for them to knock off Kansas. I mean, Perry, this is the team that, if I'm not mistaken, was like 10 or 15 games below 500. It just somehow got in the tournament by winning the Summit League.
20
And I
and
think
33 to be exact.
that's insane. That's insane. And they almost knocked off Creighton in the second game, 11-10. And so I think Arkansas was just talent-wise, Perry was by far the best team in this regional, and I think they handled business and did what they were supposed to do. I mean, they won every single game by what, 4 or more runs. They were never really in trouble here. So I think Arkansas showed that. I mean, they delivered in the postseason, which is what we expect. Now, Perry, here's the tricky part. We got Tennessee next week, or or starting tomorrow, and that's going to be kind of the real test here because I think Tennessee can match up talent wise a lot better. And Perry, as an Arkansas guy, this is about the time where Arkansas starts to do Arkansas things. So the pressure is going to be on here for the
I think
Razorbacks.
Razorbacks fans just glad to survive in advance to see the Super Regional. So at this point, we'll take it one day at a time, and starting tomorrow, going into this weekend, we'll start there. Then let's move over to Athens, Georgia. Number 7 Georgia in the regional over in Athens, hosting Duke, Oklahoma State, and Binghamton. And for Georgia, they get Binghamton in the first opening game, 20-4. All Bulldogs in this one. The Bulldogs get it done off of 15 hits and 0 errors on the other side for Binghamton. 6 hits and 1 error. Then we have the matchup between Duke and Georgia. How about Duke? The Blue Devils get it done 6-3 in this one off 11 hits, 0 errors for the Bulldogs of Georgia. 9 hits, 0 errors. Now we got Georgia versus Oklahoma State. All Oklahoma State, but it was close. Oklahoma State getting it done. In the bottom of the ninth inning, the seal the deal, 11-9, the final score is the Cowboys get it done off 11 hits and 1 error on the other side for the Bulldogs. Also 11 hits and 1 error. And it's Oklahoma State that sneaks by Georgia. But nonetheless, it's Duke. It's the Blue Devils who win the overall regional over in Athens, Georgia.
Man, this one was a little disappointing. I thought Georgia was going to be able to get through this one. The Duke loss kind of caught me off guard, but then, man, for the pitching to get just wrecked in that second game against Oklahoma State was disappointing. And I think it goes back to what we pointed to the strengths and weaknesses of the Georgia team. Their bats are as hot as any can get, as hot as anybody in the country, and you saw that, right? 20 runs in their first game, 9 runs in the game they got eliminated in. Their bats can get really hot. It's just that their pitching is just way too inconsistent. And it came back to bite them, man. They struggled with pitching against Duke, and they really struggled with their pitching against Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State got hot after that first game loss. What they put up 13 in the elimination game, 11 against Georgia in the second elimination game, and then their bats kind of cooled down, and Duke was able to kind of keep it middle of the road there and escape. But this was a really disappointing performance for Georgia, man. But we knew what their Achilles heel was, and sometimes, man, there's just all it takes is a team to expose that one big flaw you have. I think that's what happened to the Bulldogs this postseason.
Unfortunately, Bulldogs fold, and we've had that conversation that during the regular season they got as high as ranked number 3 in the nation. They're one of the SEC teams that fell over this regional tournament time, and you had a lot of people saying, "Okay, what's happening?" And we saw exactly what happened with Georgia. Congratulations to Duke moving on to the Super Regional. Now we move over to Vanderbilt. We're going to Nashville, Tennessee. Vanderbilt, number 1. Of course, coming into this regional, having won the SEC baseball tournament single game elimination this year. And Vanderbilt comes in with a lot of high expectations because guess what? We know to win the SEC tournament, you got to be a pretty damn good baseball team. And in this regional, Louisville, East Tennessee State, who we know had beat Tennessee earlier this year, and Wright State. How about Vanderbilt in game 1 having to take on Wright State? 4-3 was the final score as the Commodores able to get it done off of 4 hits, 0 errors on the other side for Wright State. 5 hits and 0 errors. The Commodores then go on to take on Louisville. And in a close one, Louisville gets it done. The Cardinals 3-2 over the Commodores. In this one, Louisville 8 hits and 3 errors for the Commodores. 5 hits and 1 error. Now we have an elimination game between Vanderbilt and Wright State. And how about this one? Wright State eliminates Vanderbilt. 5-4 is the final score in this one as Wright State got it done off of 8 hits, 1 error on the other side for Vanderbilt Commodores. 3 hits and 0 errors. Can't tell you this one, but I did not see this one coming, Blue. Who would have thought the number 1 team coming into the NCAA baseball tournament will be getting knocked out by Wright State, a team that I'm pretty sure a lot of people are saying, what the hell is this school? But nonetheless, Wright State gets it done. And nonetheless, Louisville is the overall champion of the Nashville Regional. Louisville then will move on to the Super Regional.
Oh man, yeah. Here's okay. Let me tell you because I'll kind of give you like a breakdown of exactly how I was feeling through this. Because I watched the first game that first game against Wright State. I said, "Ooh." I don't know if something's right here with Vandy. They needed 3 runs in the eighth to get past Wright State. That's a little worrisome. I was like, man, maybe it's Vandy. They'll bounce right back. It's cool. Then you get to that Louisville game and it's 2-3, and the bats just weren't there for Vandy. I said, oh man, this isn't looking good. And then you get to that. I remember watching that. I was texting you during the elimination game,
Yep.
and I was like, man, Vandy's on the ropes. Vandy's on the ropes. And they put up 3 runs in the ninth, man, and it just wasn't enough. They did. I don't know if they played a single complete game all tournament. And it was just so weird for me because they were so hot coming out of the SEC tournament. They were playing the best baseball. And I think it just shows you as much as like every media member, right, likes to say, this is the key to predicting who's going to do well in the postseason. It's momentum, it's bats, it's pitching. Man, it's so unpredictable in baseball, and I think that's why the sport's so great and why we all love it. Is that Vandy was the hottest team in the country. Pitching was clicking, hitting was clicking. They had the resume, they had the strength of schedule, they had the momentum. All this stuff was going in favor of Vandy, and all it took was Wright State to send them home.
And just
Brutal.
like that, the season is over for Vanderbilt. And just like that, when you look at that regional, Louisville will head on to the super regional. All right, let's talk about the Baton Rouge region. This was one I was at all weekend. I covered this game myself personally. It was LSU, number 6, hosting Dallas Baptist, Rhode Island, and how about Little Rock, the University of Arkansas and Little Rock. And in game one, it was LSU and the University of Arkansas and Little Rock, and it was all LSU in this one. 7-0 was the final score. The Tigers got it done off 11 hits and 0 errors on the other side for the Trojans. 5 hits and 1 error. LSU then moves on to take on Dallas Baptist, and this was just a baseball clinic that the Tigers put on against Dallas Baptist. 12-0 was the final score. The Tigers in this one got it done off of 10 hits, 0 errors. Dallas Baptist in this one, 4 hits and 4 errors. Then we come to a game that was really tight on Sunday night, and it was all Little Rock, 10-4, who had Alex Box Stadium quiet and the fans headed towards the exit as the Trojans got it done off of 8 hits and 2 errors. The Tigers in this one, 11 hits and 0 errors. And now we get to Monday night. Winner takes all for the finale, and it is LSU. But the Trojans definitely were not going away in this one. LSU finds a way to get it done late in the 7th, 8th, and as well as to add 3 more runs in the 9th inning. 10-6 the final score as the Tigers get it done. 11 hits and 1 error for the Tigers on the other side for the Trojans. 8 hits, 2 errors. Euler, Little Rock gave LSU everything they can want and more in this regional. But now the Tigers and Jay Johnson and LSU survive and advance. They win the Baton Rouge Regional and they head on to the Super Regional.
Oh man. Okay, so here's why here's why I huff, Terry, because you know this, like one of my former co-hosts on my show, it lives in Baton Rouge, is a LSU alum. Like he's LSU through and through. And we were texting during the game, and all he kept bringing up was that old series. I think what year was it? Like 2016, 2012, something like that, with Stony Brook.
Stony Brook.
He was like, before that last game started, he said, "Man, this feels just like Stony Brook. It just feels like we just can't we can't figure it out, right?" But I got to say this, man, that home run with Bear Jones, what was it, in the top of the ninth? I don't know if there's a city in the state of Louisiana that did not hear the crowd roar when that ball went over went over the wall. And then also too, man, Evans, the pitcher,
Mm-hmm.
was just to get out at the bottom of the seventh, bases loaded with a 1-run lead, was massive. And I think you saw the emotions, man, when he got that last strikeout there, and it just all kind of poured out of him. And I'll say this with LSU, they were dominant the first 2 games. I think they slept walk in that the first game against Little Rock, or the second game against Little Rock, but then the second elimination game, they kind of slept walk early through that, Perry. And then I think you finally saw it click about that 4th, 5th inning where it's like, man, if we don't get this together, we're going home. And we always talk about the favorite saying, especially in football, that we both love to cover, is the biggest playmakers make plays in the biggest games. You saw that from LSU. Every single time LSU needed a big play made, somebody from LSU, whether it was pitching, whether it was hitting, whether it was fielding, somebody made a winning play in a winning moment. And I think that's why we've talked all year, right, Perry? LSU hasn't led the SEC at any point this year.
And listen,
Both.
that lineup hitting between Jared Jones, Ethan Fry, Luis Hernandez. I mean, all of those guys in the lineup stepped up big to make big plays when they needed. And even Case and Evans in that last 12 Ks. I mean, he was just getting them out of there left and right, especially against a team with Euler, who was having success hitting the ball. And one of the guys for Euler that was having success was Angel Cano, who had ultimately won unanimously MVP of the Baton Rouge Regional, man. I mean, this was a game, and I had an opportunity to ask Jay Johnson a question during the post game. And I said, hey, coach, once it was all said and done in that final game, I said, you could not deny top seeds losing across the nation. But with those top seeds losing, did it feel like you guys had your back up against the wall in this game? And if so, what did you do to get your team to kind of relax? Because Johnson smiled and he was excited to answer that question. He said, I went back to the basics. I did something I haven't done since I started baseball coaching. I just kept it simple. I went to the board. I wrote every guy's name down. And next to his name, I basically told him what you're going to do today. And he said, as the game continued to unfold, he just couldn't do nothing but smile and feel like it was destined, because he said literally everything he told these guys that they were going to do on that board, it was amazing to watch it unfold that these guys actually were doing it. And that's what helped this team win the game. He said, over his career, he did not switch things up. He did something different in that game and went back to the basics. And that's ultimately what helped the Tigers win this game against a really tough Euler team.
I'll say this, and that's kind of the point I was trying to get at there is even though LSU didn't win the SEC, right? They weren't the number one team in the SEC. Me and you have talked about all year, when this team locks in, they're arguably the most talented. And they have such a high ceiling that I do wonder if, like, maybe that Little Rock game was a little bit of a wake-up call. And if this LSU team continue that momentum, I still think I know this might sound crazy, like looking at all the super regionals, right, and thinking about the ceiling of every team, I think LSU right now should be the favorite to
Mm-hmm.
win it all. I think if you would ask every other team in the super regional who's the scariest team to face, it would be LSU.
Ooh, that lineup is serious. The pitching is serious, man. They're going to be a tough out. They just have to come with it and bring it and don't get their back up against the wall. But their next one is going to be tough as LSU moves on in the Super Region. We'll talk more about that game because they're going to have West Virginia coming into town this weekend. Let's move on. Let's go over to Knoxville, Tennessee. As number 14 Tennessee hosts Wake Forest, Cincinnati, and Miami of Ohio. And in this one, Tennessee in game one takes on Miami, Ohio. 9-2 the final score for the Volunteers. In this one, they get it done off of 9 hits and 1 error. Blue. On the other side for Miami, 5 hits and 2 errors. Now we got a matchup between Tennessee and Cincinnati. It's all Volunteers in this one. 10-6 final score as both teams traded runs in the bottom and the top of the ninth, but it just wasn't enough for Cincinnati. The Volunteers get it done off of 12 hits and 2 errors. On the other side for the Bearcats of Cincinnati, 7 hits and 0 errors. Now we got a matchup between Tennessee and Wake Forest in this one. Wake Forest gets it done. 7-6 the final score as the Demon Deacons get it off of 10 hits, 1 error on the other side for the Vols, 7 hits and 1 error. Rematch, winner takes all. Here we go. Tennessee gets it done 11-5 over Wake Forest. For Wake Forest in this one, 6 hits, 0 errors. For Tennessee Volunteers, 9 hits and 0 errors. Tennessee survives in advance, and we've seen this team kind of have its ups and downs coming towards the end of the regular season, going into the SEC single game elimination tournament. But they did what they needed to do. They held it down, and they won that game, and Tennessee advances to a super regional.
Mm. I understand that they lost that one game to Wake. I thought Tennessee was dominant and impressive all weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Even with that one, what was it, a one-run loss there in the first championship game,
Mm-hmm.
and
7-6 the final score.
and in that one, man, they had it. They tied it up in the sixth, and then Wake Forest puts up that one run in the ninth and escapes there. And I thought Tennessee left some some like meat on the bone in that game where they had some chances to kind of close that one out. And you saw they woke right back up 11-5 in that final game. But what 9-2, 10-6, 11-5 in their 3 wins. They were impressive in all 3 wins. They let that one get away. but Wake Forest was hitting the ball really well in this in this regional, man. 6 runs in their first game, 14 in their elimination game, 10 in the next one, 7-5. They were putting up runs, and I think it put some pressure on Tennessee a little bit, but they've responded. And Tennessee, again, another SEC team with a whole lot of potential, right, Perry? Where if they turn it on, they could be good. They were number one and undefeated going into SEC play for a reason, but it's this consistency with Tennessee. And I'll say this, I really do hate that Tennessee and Arkansas have to face off in the Super Regionals because both those teams are good enough to get to the College World Series and win it. And I think it's one of those things where, you see it in college football playoffs, you see it in NBA playoffs, you see it in MLB. It's like, man, if those two teams weren't on the same side of the bracket, they could meet in the national title. And I think you're going to get a national title level matchup when Arkansas and Tennessee meet this upcoming
Yeah,
weekend.
I think all eyes would be on that super region to watch these two teams because remember, they ended the regular season and Arkansas was able to get past Tennessee. And this one I think is going to get a little chippy because Van Horn and Tony kind of had some words with each other. This seems like this is going to be one to watch. And I think for everybody watching super regionals, all eyes are going to be up at Fayetteville to watch this matchup between the Arkansas Razorbacks and the Tennessee Volunteers. Let's move over to Oxford, Mississippi to take on number 10, Ole Miss hosting Georgia Tech, Western Kentucky, and Murray State. Ole Miss starts it off against Murray State, and it's Murray State 9-6 in this one as the final score. Murray State gets it done off of 12 hits and 0 errors on the other side for the Rebels of Ole Miss, 8 hits and 2 errors. Ole Miss then goes on to take on Western Kentucky in the elimination game. It's all Ole Miss in this one, 8-6, as Western Kentucky really tried to battle back in the bottom of the ninth to put up 2 runs, but it was not enough for Ole Miss in this one. 15 hits and 3 errors for Western Kentucky, 14 hits and 1 error. Now we have a matchup between Georgia Tech and Ole Miss. Georgia Tech has been a team that has been pretty solid throughout the year. We've talked about them with their midweek games against the SEC. And this one against the SEC with Ole Miss, it is all Ole Miss. 11-9 is the final score. The Rebels in this one, 14 hits, 2 errors on the other side for Georgia Tech, 12 hits and 1 error. Now we have a matchup again, rematch between Ole Miss and Murray State. And it is Murray State who gets it done. 12-11 is the final score over the Rebels. Murray State gets it done off of 19 hits, 0 errors on the other side for Ole Miss, 10 hits and 2 errors in blue. How about Murray State? Now, we haven't even begun to talk about this team all year, but Murray State comes in the Oxford Regional and defeats Ole Miss, who is the number 10 team coming in hosting, and Murray State moves on to the Super Regionals.
What a what a performance by Murray State. I want to say this wasn't like your, oh, they snuck into the tournament. They're a 4 seed. Let's just go ahead and get them up out of there. This team won 42 games this
Yeah,
year. Like this team was no pushover. And you talk about that Little Rock team that gave LSU trouble. Murray State swept them, including having a game where they won 21-2. And you talk about this Ole Miss team. They played Ole Miss in the regular season and they lost by 1 run in 10 innings. Terry, they beat Kentucky this year, in a road matchup, non-conference midweek game. So this was a team that was battle tested, that was not going to blink in the moment, and had some real talent. And it was not your average 4 seed. And you saw that early, winning that first game 9-6. They put up 13 runs against a really good Georgia Tech team. Perry, this is a Georgia Tech team that pushed Auburn, had some big in-conference, out-of-conference wins. Then they still put up 8 runs in the game that they lost to Ole Miss. They put up 12 in the final game. This offense was impressive for Murray State, man. Pitching was a little iffy, which is fine for because we talk about this, right, Perry, especially in the regional, super regionals, or really just the regionals. That pitching is tough for these smaller schools, right? Because you don't have the depth of an LSU, a Tennessee, and Auburn. So, Perry, if you kind of get put in that elimination bracket, it really strains your pitching rotation. And the fact that they lost to Ole Miss and had to go to that fourth game, I do think it impacted their pitching rotation. But man, they responded. This is a really good Murray State team. And I'm going to be very curious to see how they respond in the next round because they jumped up on Ole Miss. They had 19 hits in that last game, Perry.
yeah,
Their offense was clicking. Now, listen, they face a pretty good Duke team, but I'll say this, with Duke coming out of that regional instead of Georgia, I feel like they have a pretty decent shot at potentially pulling off the upset in that one.
that's right. Let's move over to Auburn, Alabama. Number 4, Auburn is taking on North Carolina State. Stetson and Central Connecticut State. And let's go to game one with Auburn taking on Central Connecticut State. It is Auburn in this one. 9-5 is the final scores. The Tigers got it done off of 13 hits and 1 error on the other side for Central Connecticut State. 14 hits and 1 error. Then Auburn moves on to take on Stetson. 8-5 was the final score in this one. The Tigers of Auburn, 12 hits, 0 errors on the other side for Stetson, 12 hits and 1 error. Now we got a matchup between Auburn and North Carolina State. 11-1 is the final score as Auburn able to get it done over North Carolina State. 15 hits, 0 errors for the Tigers, 9 hits and 0 errors for North Carolina State. Auburn getting it done, one of the better teams in the country, number 4 for a reason, holding down their regional, and they get a victory and advance to the Super Regionals.
Now, and I'm not saying that because I know everyone's like, oh, you're an Auburn grad, this and that. I do think, and Perry, tell me if I'm wrong. I want you to correct me because you watched all these games too. I think this was the most dominant performance for an SEC team in a regional.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like there was never a doubt Auburn was getting out of here. Like they dominated every game they played. And I think they're the only team that I feel like never was in danger. Right? They jump up on Central Connecticut State in that first game, right? Central Connecticut State makes it a little iffy in the middle innings, but then Auburn pulls away. They beat Stetson in the second game, and then NC State never had a shot in the last game. Auburn's offense was just too good. And I think it speaks, you look at the difference because Auburn was struggled last year a lot, right, Perry? I mean, that was one of like people were talking about if Butch Jones was the guy for the job. And this year, man, I think it's the pitching rotation. They have consistently
Yeah.
found somebody to deliver pitching, and I don't think they have an elite pitching rotation, right? But it's so much better than last year. And Auburn was hitting the ball really well a season ago. It was just they couldn't outscore anybody because the
And we
pitching
saw
staff was so
pitching for
bad.
them, Blue, come in clutch, especially midweek series as they went back and forth with Georgia Tech.
Yeah, they played a difficult out of conference schedule too, and they had some big games. And you look at NC State, they put up 12 runs against Central Connecticut State in the elimination game, 17 runs against Stetson. They get to the final game, they put up 1 run against Auburn. And it was late, if I'm not mistaken, too, right? And man, Auburn's hitting was just unbelievable. Yeah, they put up 1 run in the eighth inning. Auburn puts up 7 in the fourth. And I'll say this, the thing with Auburn, they're a little streaky hitting. Well, not really hitting, but I think scoring, right? They comes in. You'll see them put up 5 runs in an inning, 6 runs in an inning, 7 runs in an inning. If they can find a way to kind of spread that out and be a little bit more consistent putting runs on the board, because they left a lot of it was 11-1 period, but they left a lot of runners on the base in that game too. So I think Auburn's playing really, really good baseball now. The thing is, they get a red hot Coastal Carolina team this weekend that's won 20 plus straight games. So I'm very, very curious to see if they're able to continue that. But I'll say this: Auburn has the thing that's changed with Auburn here. I remember being a student there. Bro, baseball was like an afterthought.
No
Like
doubt.
baseball was terrible. Baseball was because just put in perspective, I graduated in spring of 2018. Perry, they were bad, and like no one cared. And then also too, you had Bruce Pearl just coming on the scene. Auburn football with the Malzahn. My senior year, this when we beat Bama, Georgia, went to the SEC championship, so nobody was concerned about baseball. But then I remember the year after I left, we made the College World Series. And I think that opened some people's eyes. And then you saw them expand the stadium. You see them build these new training facilities. They're adding more seating this weekend for the Super Regional. They've set attendance records every single year since I've graduated. And so I think the investment in baseball is the biggest change here. And I think if you're Butch, you look around and it's like, man, if y'all would have gave me this support when I first got here, we may have been winning earlier, right? And I think it's a lesson, and we talked about some of the SEC teams that we didn't think in the preseason were investing enough in baseball, and it came to fruition when we got into conference play and we've gotten through the season. So I think give credit to Auburn for finally investing in baseball, man. And this team, if they can get past Coastal Carolina, could be a dark horse potentially going to the College World Series. And I say dark horse tongue in cheek, right? Because you look around, they're the second highest seed remaining in the tournament. So is that really a dark horse? But I think if you ask the average college baseball fan, they take LSU over them. They might take Oregon State. They might take North Carolina. They might take Tennessee over Auburn. And so I do wonder if Auburn's being a little bit overlooked here in this process.
I like the way Auburn looks. They play really smooth. They don't make it look complicated. It's good baseball to watch. Sometimes you watch some teams that get a little cringy. Auburn is not that. Auburn is you can sit down and watch an entire Auburn baseball game, and when you're done, you say, man, that was a really good game. That was a really good team. And that's what I like about Auburn in blue.
Man, I'm telling you, it's exciting, and I'll be. I can't wait to see what they do this weekend, man. And also, too, I think it's good for the conference when you have teams like Auburn and some of these teams that maybe not historically have been dominant, right? Because you expect it from LSU, we expect it from Vandy, we
Mm-hmm.
expect it to a point from Mississippi State and Texas, kind of even Texas A&M, Tennessee now with what they're doing. But man, it's really good for the SEC to have some teams that are not historically great to be really, really good because that's really how the conference elevates itself is when teams unexpectedly get good and push some of those top teams that have always sat at the top of the throne.
Yep. Let's move over to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We got number 5, North Carolina, hosting Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Holy Cross. In the first game, we go SEC, of course. Oklahoma take on Nebraska. Both these teams know each other well from back in the day, right? 7-4 final score. Sooners get it done off 11 hits, 2 errors on the other side for the Cornhuskers. 6 hits, 1 error. Then we move on. Oklahoma taking on North Carolina. It is the Tar Heels in this one, 11-5 final score. North Carolina gets it done off of 13 hits, 1 error for the Sooners, 12 hits, 1 error. Now we got a rematch between Oklahoma and Nebraska again. All Sooners in this one, 17-1 final scores. The Sooners open it up offensively. They get it done off of 18 hits, blew 1 error on the other side for the Cornhuskers, 6 hits, 5 errors. Now we have this matchup between Oklahoma and North Carolina. This time it's Oklahoma getting the victory 9-5 as they were able to seal the deal over host North Carolina. The Sooners get it done, 11 hits and 1 error for the Tar Heels, 7 hits and 2 errors, and then we come back. Winner takes all. This time it was all North Carolina, the host team, over in Chapel Hill. The Tar Heels gets it done. 14-4 the final score off of 17 hits, 0 errors for the Sooners, 7 hits, 1 error. How about North Carolina holding it down? But nonetheless, Oklahoma making it a scare. They were number 2 seed coming into this regional for a reason, but they didn't go away lightly, and they made it a hell of a series with North Carolina. But North Carolina surviving and advancing at home as they host the regional in Chapel Hill. They will move on to the Super Regional.
Man, huge performance from UNC. I thought, like you said, I thought Oklahoma played well. I just think UNC was really, really good, and I think this is a team that could make some waves down the stretch. And I thought they were pretty convincing in all their games. Even outside of that one loss, they're a really, really good team, and I think they're a team that could be a dark horse for this national title. Man, really impressive performance.
Let's move on to Tallahassee, Florida. We got number 9 Florida State hosting Northeastern, who we had talked about cracking the top 25 towards the end of the regular season. Mississippi State coming out of SEC. And Bethune-Cookman, who won it off a walk-off fashion in the SWAC tournament against their rival. Guess who? Florida A&M right there in Tallahassee, Florida. And this one started out with Mississippi State taking on Northeastern, a team who had cracked the top 25. How about Northeastern, Blue, coming into this tournament, 48-10 overall on the season and 25-2 in conference play. Mississippi State gets it done over Northeastern. 11-2 is the final score in game 1 between these two teams. Mississippi State gets it done off of 13 hits and 1 error for Northeastern, and this one 5 hits and 0 error. Then we have the matchup between Florida State, the host school, taking on Mississippi State. It was all Florida State in this one. 10-3 was the final score as the Seminoles got it done off of 9 hits and 0 errors for Mississippi State, 5 hits and 2 errors. Now we have the rematch between Northeastern and Mississippi State. It is Mississippi State gets it done in an elimination game. 3-2 the final score. The Bulldogs get it done. 13 hits, 0 errors for Northeastern on their way getting eliminated. Got it done off of 4 hits and 0 errors. Now, back to a rematch once again between Mississippi State and host Florida State. This time, still, Florida State gets it done 5-2. The final score, the Seminoles, 10 hits, 0 errors on the other side for the Bulldogs, 5 hits and 1 error. Florida State advances as they hold it down over in Tallahassee, Florida. Number 9, Florida State advances, Blue, to the Super Regional.
Another dominant regional performance, man. I think this was another team that really opened my eyes. I thought Florida State was dominant from game 1 to game 3. It was never in doubt that their bats were consistent. Pitching staff was good. They did not allow more than 3 runs in a game. Really, really impressive performance from Florida State. And I just think Mississippi State, man, it was just a down year. I think we saw it from the get-go, right? We were a little bit surprised how slow they started SEC play. And they got a little hot there at times, Perry, but they were never able to just put it together consistently, which makes a postseason run very, very unlikely. And so I think it was a little bit of it was a not even a little bit, it was definitely a down season for Mississippi State. And I just think they ran into a Florida State team that was really, really good. And I thought Florida State was impressive this
Yeah,
weekend.
Florida State, one of those teams we've been paying attention to all year coming out of the ACC. They've been right there with Clemson, right in the thick of things amongst the top teams, along with a top-heavy SEC and the top 10 rankings thus far this year. So to see Florida State hold on and advance. Now let's look at some of these super regional matchups. Let's start with Louisville and Miami, Florida. What do you think about this matchup with Louisville and Miami, Florida in the super regional?
Oh, man. Okay. So, you it's funny, and I just want to point this out for our listeners. Perry, these are both ACC teams. Did you know they did not meet in the regular season this year?
That sets up all for a better super regional now, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's insane. For a pick here, as good as Miami looked in the regionals, I do think Louisville went through a more strenuous regional, and I think Louisville has a higher upside just in terms of a team than Miami. I like Louisville here, but I think it goes to 3 games. I'm gonna go Louisville 2-1
I
here.
go Louisville with you. I go that same way. Let's look at Florida State taking on Oregon State, one of the regions we didn't talk about because no SEC team was a part of it. Over in Corvallis, you had Oregon State, TCU, USC, and St. Mary's. St. Mary's was the team to watch in this one. I was very impressed watching their baseball program compete in that regional, but Oregon State, of course, as we've known year in and year out to be a really, really, really good baseball program, held on to win that regional. They'll be taking on Florida State, number 9 versus number 8 in the super regional.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Florida State here. I was really impressed with their regional performance. I think all season they've been one of the more consistent ACC teams, and I think they get Oregon State here. It's gonna be tough to win on the road, but I like Florida State in 3 games here. I think they take it to a game 3, they get that last one in a close one. I just think Florida State's playing some really, really good baseball right now.
I'm gonna go opposite. I'm gonna go Oregon State. I'm gonna go 2-1 Oregon State in this one. I think you can't count out Oregon State. In this time of year, they have shown in the past they know how to win. They are battle tested when it comes to this time of the year. This program knows what it means to have to get to Omaha. I don't think this would be nothing they take lightly. I'm gonna go Oregon State in this one, 2-1. Let's move on to another super regional. North Carolina taking on Arizona. Arizona winning one of the regions, of course, we didn't talk about because there were no SEC teams. It was hosted by Oregon up in Eugene. It was number 12, Oregon. It was Arizona, Cal Poly, and Utah Valley. Arizona Arizona found themselves winning and coming out as the number 2 seed in that regional. They'll take on North Carolina. Your thoughts on North Carolina and Arizona?
Um, I think this is gonna be one of the blowout regionals. I think North Carolina gets this one 2-0, and I don't even know if it's very close, Perry. I'm pretty confident here that North Carolina is going to walk through here. They were dominating their regional. They only lost that 1 game to Oklahoma. I just think they're a more talented team than Arizona.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. I think North Carolina, watching them from the previous year to this year, I think looking at them, and that was a pretty tough one with Oklahoma right there, giving them everything they wanted. I agree with you. I'll go North Carolina in this one. Let's then look at Coastal Carolina taking on Auburn. You just talked about the Auburn Tigers, and previously you talked about Coastal Carolina, winners of 21 consecutive games. This should be one hell of a series between these two teams.
I'll say this. I think the streak of consecutive wins ends for
In
Coastal
game one,
Carolina in game one,
yeah.
but I do respect Coastal Carolina enough to think I I I I would personally say they're going to give Auburn everything they want and more. But I think this goes to 3 games, but I just find it hard to see Auburn losing 2 games at home in that stadium with how they're playing right now. I think the bats get hot at the right time, so I'm gonna go Auburn 2-1 here. But I think Coastal Carolina makes it super super interesting. And I'll say this: do not be surprised if this is one of the upsets of the weekend, man, because I don't think Auburn could take the Chanticleers lightly, man. They are one of the most talented teams in the country.
And I was gonna say this is a coin flipping for me. I'm gonna go with the upset. I think Coastal Carolina goes in and gets it done and find themselves on a trip to Omaha. I'm going to go Coastal Carolina in that one against Auburn, but I'm really a fan of Auburn. I like the way the Tigers have looked thus far as they head into the Super Regional against Coastal Carolina. Now let's look at UTSA taking on number 15, UCLA. Of course, UCLA in their regional was UC Irvine, a team who we'll be talking about all year, top 25 program, Arizona State and Fresno State. How about UTSA taking on number 15, UCLA?
Oh, man. God, do it. This will be my upset. I'm going to go
Oh,
UTSA.
oh, well, guess what? It ain't Texas they're playing against now.
Yeah, and I saw I saw an interesting stat. Um, so against quad one opponents, UCLA is 2-7. UTSA is 9-5 in those
Ooh, there you go.
games. So, and I think UTSA is playing really, really well. There's always a team that is unexpected that makes that run. So I'm gonna go with this will be my upset pick of the show. I like UTSA
I
here.
like it. I'm going to go. You know what? Back to backs. Let's get some teams you don't normally see in Omaha. Let's go UTSA. This will be huge for that athletic program. Let's go UTSA over UCLA. All right, I'm with you because winning in Austin, Texas is not easy. I don't give a damn who you are, what program you are. And they went over there and did it. And as you said, they've been able to be the kryptonite to the Longhorns thus far this season. So I like their chances in this one against UCLA. I'm with you on this one, Blue. UTSA. Let's look at Murray State and Duke. This is an odd super regional. I think no one has saw coming. What's your thoughts on this one? Is number 4 seed coming out of that regional taking on number 2 seed coming out of the Athens regional. Both these teams were able to get by hosting SEC teams, and now you got Murray State and Duke in a super regional.
As much as I love the Murray State story, and I would love for them to advance, Perry, I just I personally don't I the thing that worries me here, Perry, is kind of the same thing that got me with Georgia, where their bats are so hot, right? And they can put up runs, but their pitching staff is so inconsistent. I think Duke's able to take advantage of that, and they're able to slow down that hitting of Murray State. So I like Duke here. I do think it has the potential to go to 3 games, but I don't see the Blue Devils losing this one.
Let's go 3 straight upsets. Let's go Murray State in this one, Blue. I'm going Murray State. I got Coastal Carolina, UTSA, Murray State. This is the year of the unknown teams. When we get to Omaha, they're going to have to do a lot of profiles because people are going to be asking, where the hell are these teams coming from this year? I'm going Murray State with the upset over Duke in this one. How about that one?
Oh
Now,
man.
in Baton Rouge, I'll be here this weekend covering this game. LSU and West Virginia. This is a hell of a matchup. LSU struggled with Arkansas Little Rock, and then you saw West Virginia come out and get past Clemson, who, of course, hosted a regional. And now this should be a great matchup here in Baton Rouge between the Tigers and the Mountaineers.
I'll be honest. I just don't know if there's a team that I would trust to go into the box and win 2 out of 3 games. I and also too with the emergence of Evans at pitcher too, like the rotation's too good. Hitting, I mean, any given night, Perry, it could be somebody else, especially in the middle of that lineup. So I like LSU here. I think they get it in 2 games, man. I think LSU wakes up and gets it done.
Yeah, I'm go LSU. I think there was a wake-up call against Little Rock to say, hey, we got to get it done. And Jay Johnson said himself he had to go back and do some things he had not done since the beginning of his career. Maybe that was a readjustment, a reset button hit for this team to wake up and realize there's a reason why top seeds lost in this nation, across the nation. They got complacent in what they do and what willing to change. LSU was willing to change some things up, and here they are. I'm going to go LSU in this one over West Virginia, but I think West Virginia does make it a tight game. And the one that I think everybody's going to be looking at, all eyes, is going to be number 14 Tennessee up in Fayetteville for the Super Regional against number 3 Arkansas Razorbacks. Once again, we just saw these two teams meet in a series just a few weeks ago up in Fayetteville. The Razorbacks were able to get it done 2-1. Here we are again. And this one I think is going to be chippy. Two programs who have a lot of hoorah about them, and two fan bases who want wins trying to get to Omaha. Tennessee, the defending national champions. Arkansas just ready to be crowned national champions at some point in the Dave Van Horn era. And now here we got a hell of a matchup between two SEC programs meeting up in the Super Regional.
Oh man, I have no idea where to go with this one because I'll say this, like I think Tennessee has the higher ceiling of the two.
Uh-huh.
So if they're both locked in, I like Tennessee here. It's just you also have to factor in, I think Arkansas has been the more consistent team out of the two, and they're playing at home. And so it's like I can make an argument for both sides just because of consistency and just breaking the trend of falling short year after year. I'm gonna go Arkansas in 3 games, but man, I think Tennessee is going to give the Razorbacks everything they want and probably more than they ever wanted in this situation. But I do think the Razorbacks find a way to pull it out.
Yeah, I think this one turns into where if Tennessee's back up against the wall, you will see Tony trying to fire up this team. I think, and you will see it between these two ball clubs. I'm gonna go to Razorbacks as well. They kind of dropped in the odds overall to win it all. LSU is 6, boasted up into that number 1 spot. Arkansas has kind of dropped down a little bit behind them overall on the national side, but I think now is the time for the Razorbacks to show their fans that have been loyal throughout the years of heartbreak to show them that we can be consistent and we can win the big game. And what a way to win the big game if you can close it out in a super regional at home to end your home play to head to Omaha. The Razorbacks have to get it done. And we've seen the inconsistencies with Tennessee this year, the frustrations that have come out of it. But maybe that worked out for a reason to have them playing the base type of baseball that they're playing right now. This should be a good series, but I'm going Razorbacks as well. The Razorbacks have to get it done this weekend, Blue. I feel over Tennessee.
You would think so. I mean, because what's the narrative if Arkansas loses this one? Because I mean, this is one of the better teams they've had, and if you can't get it done right now, I just don't know. Ah, man, it would be brutal, especially with how dominant they were in the regional as well, and they were so good throughout the season. And the bad part is, if I'm not mistaken, if they advance to the College World Series, who would they face? Would it be the winner of LSU West Virginia game one?
Not sure.
I believe so. And if that's the case, man, what a draw for Arkansas. I'd be sick.
Oh, just hope Arkansas don't do Arkansas shit. Excuse my language, but the Razorback fans know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh man, it's just it would be I just want to know like the relief that would come over the fan base if they were able to finally get it done this year.
And let me ask you this before we get ready to get out of here. The last question of the day. What went wrong for the SEC with 13 teams entering the NCAA regional and only 4 advancing to super regionals?
Man, I don't even know. One, I think there were a few cases of just bad matchups, right? And I think of specifically Texas, the fact that they get paired up with the one team that has beat them this year, multiple times. But also too, I just think that there were flaws that were kind of overlooked for some of the SEC teams. Like I'll say this, and I hate this because we get this in football too, right? Where if a team loses in the postseason, we got the other fan bases screaming they didn't deserve it or this and that. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think you evaluate the resume at the time of picking these teams, and it's hard to argue that any of the SEC teams outside of maybe one didn't deserve to be in. You know what I mean? So I think for the SEC there were flaws. You look at Georgia's pitching; it's been inconsistent all year, right? And it cost them in the regional. Vandy's a little bit more unexplainable. You just had a very bad performance, but also too, I just think there were some teams that weren't as good. Bama's been inconsistent all year. Mississippi State's been on a down year. Florida was terrible for the first 2 months of the season. So I think there were some teams that maybe got propped up by the overall strength of the conference, but also too there were just some bad matchups. And also in baseball, man, it all depends on when you get hot. And I think there was just some teams that maybe peaked at the wrong times, and also too maybe just had a cold weekend. And Perry, this, if you just your pitcher has one bad game, you get put in the loser bracket, then your bats go cold. You can be going home.
Yeah.
Where if you played that game 9 more times, you win 8 out of the 9. So I just think it's the fickle nature of baseball, man. And I still don't think it proves that the SEC shouldn't have got that many teams in because who do you put in that, you feel had a better resume? Because everyone likes to use hindsight, Perry. You know this, and it happens in football, happens in basketball, everywhere. Hindsight's always 2020. But when you're sitting in that room making the decision at that time, it's hard to argue that any of those teams didn't deserve to be there.
That's right. 13 of the teams up from the SEC that entered to SEC, enter the NCAA regional. 8 of them from the SEC hosted. All right, Blue, before we get ready to get out of here, man, let everybody know where they can keep up with you and follow you at, man.
Yeah, man. The Blue Bloods on all podcast streaming platforms and YouTube, FCS Football Central on si.com/college/FCS, and here usually on Mondays, but we pushed it to Thursday this week with my guy Perry and talking SEC baseball.
Yeah, and we'll be back next week as we get past these super regionals this week to see who's going to be headed to Omaha. And of course, everybody, I'm Perry White, and you can keep up with me. I'm also the host of the Jaguar Journal on 107.3 FM here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But if you're not able to catch it live here in Baton Rouge, you can definitely go follow us on and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can follow the Jaguar Journal across all social media, Facebook, X, Instagram. We're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And then right here on the Yard Network, of course, with my man Zach McKinnell. We'll be back next week to recap the Super Regionals. And you can follow On the Yard Network across all social media, Facebook, on Instagram, on X, as well as go subscribe, please, to the On the Yard Network YouTube channel. We love to have you guys follow along with us, continue this journey as we inch closer and closer to Omaha. We appreciate you guys who have been along the journey with us each and every week as we've been talking about SEC baseball. We've gone through conference play. We've gone through conference tournament. We've gone through the regional, and here we are at super regional. So the next time you see us, we'll be talking about who's headed to Omaha. So for myself, Perry White, and my man Zach McKinnell, we appreciate you guys. Be sure to hit the like button and the share button. Talk to us in the comment section as well. But most importantly, share. Let people know, hey, there are two guys out here talking about some SEC baseball and national baseball across the nation, and they know what they're talking about. And we'd love to have you guys to help us continue to grow this thing. So appreciate you guys, and we hope you guys have a nice week. And I hope your team wins this weekend. So you guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys next